Well, greetings. Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us. Gerry O'Beirne is an Irish singer, songwriter, guitarist, and record producer. At different times, my guest has called Ireland, Ghana, England, California, and Mexico home. Gerry plays a wide variety of guitars, including 6 and 12-string, ukulele, slide guitar, and a tiple. And we'll find out just what a tiple is. He seamlessly meshes traditional folk with contemporary stylings for a most enjoyable listening experience. Mr. O'Beirne has 3 solo albums to date, along with albums collaborating with fiddlers Rosie Shipley and Kevin Burke. Touring across the globe has brought Gerry's music to a multitude of fans, and his influence can be heard as producer on many modern folk recordings. Okay, before we get started, Gerry, what is a tiple?
Oh, a tiple is
Tiple, sorry.
there's various tiples all over South America where, you know, guitar-like things that came from Spain to the New World, they just proliferated, and they have lots of different kinds. I think mine is a Martin tiple, but it's based on apparently a Costa Rican tiple, but I couldn't swear to that truth of that, you know.
All righty. Gives us a better idea there. So you were born in Ennis, County Clare, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. My father's from County Roscommon, my mother's from County Louth, but we were in Clare because my father worked for Pan American Airlines in Shannon Airport, and hence some of the travel that I got into quite young. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, in what capacity did he work for the airline?
You know, it was under some vague title like sales and cargo. It just office, I guess.
Okay, so he was really a spy, is what you're saying then.
Well, he never told me.
If it was vague, I'm just kidding. All right. We'll talk about some of your childhood memories.
Oh, well, I mean, I remember being dragged across the tarmac to the Boeing 707 when I was 6 years old on our way to Africa, and saying, no, it'll never fly, it's too big. Yeah, when I was 6, we moved to Ghana in West Africa, and quite a change, but you know, you're a child and it's all good. So I remember the smell of Africa when the plane doors opened. Yeah. Just how extraordinary that was, how different, you know. And it was a good time. I had been in Ennis to convent school from the age of 4, where typically for that time they stopped me from being a left-handed to being a right-handed person, and that's really all I remember from that time.
Really, why was that? Why did they force you?
Oh, it's a Roman Catholic thing, you know. Left in Latin is sinister. It was just not the most appropriate hand, and so children weren't allowed to be left-handed at that time.
Wow. Okay. Well,
it's actually, I mean, going forward, it's actually interesting for a guitar player that your left hand is your natural hand, because it's your sort of thinking hand for chords and all of that. So it's actually an interesting place to be as a guitar player, I think.
Yeah. Well, I just talked with Ed Dean, and how he plays the guitar backwards, plays it left-handed, the right-handed the other way. Yeah. So I thought that was, quite interesting too.
There are so many variations of that with lefties, you know, ways to approach it. Hendrix, of course, you know.
Right.
But there's an awful lot of variations on it, and it's an interesting area, you know, and it's why I suppose I was never going to be a great piano player, because the melody is in the right hand, and as I say, you sort of think with your left hand.
Did you get music coming through on the radio in Ghana?
Yeah, that definitely. Ghanaian radio was great with high life music and all that, but there was a lot of music besides. Um, there was a half an hour of pop music on BBC World Service.
Okay.
So half an hour a week of that, and that was essential listening. It was really fun. And my father had, because my father played the piano, he had he didn't have a piano there, but he had some very good classical records. So in a way, a big part of my music education was listening to some of the classic composers, and piano music in particular, which has always kind of, I still listen a lot to piano music, to classical piano music. And then there would have been there was a police band that played in the park in Accra, Ghana for Sunday, and I would go along, and they, for some reason, they had mostly French horns, which was quite an amazing sound. But brass was a big part of music in West Africa as well. High life was huge, dance music. So there was all of that to listen to. There's always music to listen to wherever you are. Yeah.
I always fascinated by that, especially the roots music, from different parts of the world, and a lot of times how similar it is, the folk music, Well, you mentioned your dad. How about your mom? Was she musically inclined at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, but she appreciated that it was important to the rest of us. So yeah.
Were both of your parents pretty supportive when you started pursuing music?
I think it came as a little bit of a shock, but they weren't unsupportive. But obviously they would have preferred, that I become a professional in some other area, probably. But by then I was clearly not under their control, so it didn't matter.
Right. Yeah. We'll go back a little bit. Can you remember your first single or album that you got?
That I got myself. Well, before I got my first album, when we were back in Ennis, I moved back to Ennis when I was 11 or so, from Africa. And at that point, my eldest sister, Anne, was in nurses training in Galway, and she started to come home on her holidays with really good records. So I imagine she must have been hanging out with a bad crowd, to have such good music. She had British blues albums, like John Mayall albums, Bob Dylan, Highway 61 Revisited, so much good music, Simon and Garfunkel, Joan Baez, all those things. So that was a huge, thing for me to just hear these records all of a sudden. It was extraordinary, and it continues to be, I'd say, a huge influence. The first record that I bought myself was Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I bought it in Tierney's shop in Ennis, which is still there, and Tierney's still sells everything under the sun, but no longer records, because only a fool would sell records now. So
good point. Well, that's really great that he's lasted, or his record shop has lasted this long,
Yeah, well, they sell everything. They sell fishing gear and bicycles and toys and all sorts of things.
Okay. All righty. Well, what about some other, I guess, being influenced by your sister, what she brought home, but what were some other musicians and artists that you were into as a teenager?
Blues generally, you hear, and the rock music, ultimately, Led Zeppelin, all those sort of hard rock. It was before they even called it hard rock, but in terms of heavy metal, I don't think Led Zeppelin were ever surpassed by all. It's become an enormous industry, that kind of music, but I don't think anything as good has ever come along after them. Pop music generally, folk music then gets a grip eventually. but it wasn't until I was working in London that I really heard serious Irish folk music in a way. Growing up in Ennis, the like a big feature in the town would have been the Ennis Musical and Dramatic Society, you know, and the singer Maura O'Connell, you know, if you know Maura, she lives in Nashville.
Right.
Her mother was the lead in the Ennis Musical and Dramatic Society. Her mother was a great soprano. So it's all kinds of everything, you know. I heard everything that was coming from the West Coast of America as well in my teens, Crosby, Stills and Nash and all that, Joni Mitchell. You know, everybody heard sort of the same music all over the world, I think. So when I was 18, I went to London, and at that point I was playing, I first played guitar in Ennis, and I really taught myself, but I never quite had a reasonable guitar, you know, to play. But in London, eventually I went out in my lunch hour and bought a Guild D25, which was the cheapest Guild at that time, but still a beautiful instrument. I still have it. And it's had I played it for years and years and years. And the first night that I had it, I slept with the thing. I mean, I was so moved by it, you know. And to have something with D25 is all mahogany, but to have something with real wood that resonates and responds to you, that was a real experience for me. So after that, it was just straight ahead into playing all the time. Yeah.
You were hooked. You were hooked. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about your first band that you ever were in?
It's hard to say, really. I had a brief band that I was sort of part of in my late teens called the Great Saturday Night Swindle.
Okay.
That was kind of a semi-acoustic rock band. And I played a lot of slide almost immediately when I really got into playing. So I was a lead player for a long time, first thing. When I came back from London, I was in a kind of a duo that was a serious kind of guitar duo. And a friend of mine lent me his 12-string, which it was a big game changer for me as well, a Martin 12-string. And it taught me so much about music, just playing it. And it really developed my music in a big way. And bless his heart, his name is Peter Gilmore. He agreed to sell it to me. And I still play it all the time. It's still my main other instrument is the 12-string. And so with another 12-string player who was from Holland, we had a duo. Eric Visser was his name. And we just played a lot of very intricate guitar music, some O'Carolan, Baroque style pieces, and pieces from all over the world. And it was short-lived, but it was an interesting process, you know. And the one where after that, I did solo gigs in Dublin for a while, but I joined a band we set up a band with Tom Moore and Janie Cribbs called Midnight Well. And in that band, I was really loose again, as it were, to play lead guitar, slide guitar, and to create kind of soundscapes for songs. Those songs were by Tom Moore, who was a great songwriter. And it was just hugely enjoyable to be in a sort of a strange Irish cowboy band, you know, is how I think of it. And we had a really good accordion player called Martin O'Connor, who's really well known here, playing accordion.
Did you do any singing in Midnight Well?
Very little. No. I just wasn't focused on it at all then. I was really happy. I had found a kind of a way to just express myself totally on lead guitar, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
So you never had any lessons on guitar,
No,
Yeah.
I had one encounter with a friend of my father's in Ennis, was worked in a bank.
Mhm.
And in time, as he became a bank manager, he became known as the singing bank manager. And he came over, and I think he showed me 3 chords, and I got a book of chords somewhere else. He wrote, I mean, it wasn't really a lesson, but he was interesting. He used to write in the style of those days, topical calypso songs. So he wrote a song like on subjects that were interesting to people who lived in Ennis and Shannon and all that. He wrote, "How can they overfly Shannon? How can they overfly Shannon? How can they overfly Shannon and bypass the Emerald Isle? All smile, bypass the Emerald Isle." So he was a character. And that was it, really. I'd never had any lessons, you know.
Well, it's I'm sure a lot of fans will echo this too, but with your intricate style, it's kind of amazing that you didn't have any lessons, that you picked it all up yourself, and
Yeah, I mean, you start off like I mentioned Joan Baez. Her guitar playing is really good.
yeah.
Bob Dylan, his guitar playing I really enjoyed, and I learned from them. Do you know? And so learning, and it's simple. It's not very simple, but it's approachable. And when you learn like that from people doing folk songs and their own songs, you just learn so much, perhaps as much as in any other way. Joan Baez was a very, very good guitar player to learn from, I think. Bob Dylan as well. I never played any Beatles songs, but I adored the Beatles from a young age. Yeah.
Right. Well, you did have the one album with Midnight Wells. Do you remember how it fared, how it went down?
Yeah, it went down really well. It was critically anyway. It was a critic's favorite, that kind of thing. And we had some glory days in Ireland and some great gigs. But like a lot of bands, it lasted about 2 years.
Yeah, I believe 79. Yeah, 77. Yeah, 79. Well, after Midnight Well, what did you do after that?
Again, I would have, I did some producing. I produced an album for Kevin Burke and Micheál O'Donnell called Promenade, which I'm still very proud of. I think it was a really good record. And some solo gigs. And I got a letter one day from Andy Irvine, who was a great letter writer. And I was in Holland at the time. He found out where I was, sent me a letter, and asked me to play with him. So I went around the world with Andy for a couple of years. The two of us played together, and that was fabulous. It really there's such a troubadour side. Well, he is a troubadour, Andy, and there's such a kind of nice to play with mandolin and bouzouki when you're guitar players. It's a lovely place to be. And we went a couple of tours to America and all over Europe, so we had a great time.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed his work with Sweden's Men. I
Yeah.
think that's some of the best, music right there. And I'm lucky to have I think a best of collection. So really, really nice stuff. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Andy, but you read my mind, so that's good. When were you living in Mexico? When did you?
Oh, I didn't really. I just spent some months there.
Okay.
I moved at the end of a tour with Andy in the States. I moved to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I lived there on and off. I mean, I was based in LA, but I toured as well around the States and spent some time in the Northwest, again, producing for Kevin Burke and all that. I was about 7 years in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about some of your experiences there. And you said you played some gigs and some shows.
Yeah. That was where I started to write songs.
Okay.
And it was very freeing to be away from home, to be away from Ireland. I've always loved the heat since Africa, you know, and the hot nights I just adore. You know, I just feel happy.
Well, you need to relocate to Texas then. If you
there's
like
hot, there's hot and there's hot. I remember swimming once off of Galveston and I was sweating inside the water. I swim here down the road every day in Dingle, and the little bit of chill in the water is good, you know.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of coolness in it.
I have another upcoming interview with a guy in Arizona. He said the other day it was 110, which beat up, by about 9 degrees. So that's like the real hot spot. You know, you want to steer clear of that area. All right. Well, you want to talk about anything before we talk about Half Moon Bay?
Just like you were asking about Los Angeles, songwriting. I wrote, you know, I started to really write there. So I wrote songs that people recorded, like Maura O'Connell recorded Western Highway, and the Isle of Malachi was another one that she recorded from that period. But I wrote a whole bunch of songs. And I was playing with Tom Moore and Janie Cribbs over there, and we did one gig support to the Grateful Dead, which was just a gas, you know. It was just such fun.
Talk some about that.
Well, I was playing through Phil Lesh's monitor. I mean, it was in the Oakland Coliseum, and huge. I just remember after the first number feeling the wave of energy from the Dead crowd, and it's completely different to any other audience in the world, the way they are and the way they react and the way they do. It's a concerted kind of wave of energy rather than hundreds or thousands of people clapping. It's just different, you know, an extraordinary experience. Yeah.
I've heard that about their audiences. Yeah, I've heard some stories. So that was enjoyable.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. And they were great. As people have always said, they were a great organization to deal with, and they're really cool. And
did you get to hobnob with any members at all?
A little bit with Jerry Garcia and Phil Lesh, but I mean, I wouldn't make too much of it, just to have a beer and say hello, you know. Yeah.
Right. Okay. What happens in Oakland stays in Oakland, huh? So well, let's move up to 1999's Half Moon Bay. Quite an album. Rave reviews at the time, and it's still garnering those kind of reviews today to new listeners. And you mentioned a little bit, songs off the album have taken on a new life by being covered by, you know, the likes of Maura O'Connell, Mary Black. Mary Black's one of my favorite singers, and Back with the Black Family. I enjoy that. What do you remember from the recording sessions?
It was recorded in 2 or 3 different studios over time, which was kind of, it suited me, I think, at the time. One track was recorded in Nashville by a engineer there called Randy Liego. Some of it in Dublin. Pierce Dunn is a great engineer. He did most of it. And I took time doing it. it had been coming a long, long time. I took out a bank loan because there was no record company. And yeah, it came after a strange period for me, because in the early 90s, I had spent a couple of years playing with the Sharon Shannon band. She's an accordion player, great musician. And that was a really dynamic band and an enormous success in Ireland. You can't really overstate how successful it was and what a phenomenon it was. And after that, things kind of slowed down for me in Ireland, but I went over to the States a lot, and I toured with Maura O'Connell, toured with Andy M. Stewart, who's a Scottish singer, and continued to write, I suppose. And so finally, this record had been a long time in the making. It was songs that were written over years and years. So it was great to get it done. It did really well in the States, where I was just, from then on, I was touring in the States a lot, and people were really appreciative of it. It didn't, I think, ever really have much of a profile in Ireland.
Is that right?
For whatever reason. I think it was the wrong time in Ireland for that kind of singer-songwriter album.
Yeah, timing has a lot to do with everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you how you roped in David Payton. He played on a couple of tracks. Yeah.
I was doing some of the recording and mixing in Edinburgh in Scotland, and the engineer John Turner, I was looking for a bass player, and he said, you should get this guy. And when it turned out to be Davy Payton, I was thrilled, you know. And his playing, he's such a great guy, but his playing is so beautiful. I still really enjoy his playing on my record. It's amazing to me. Yeah.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
So you know that I had a recent chat with him. He's a really, really nice gentleman. Well, I know you probably heard this before. I'm not going to be the first one to bring this up, but on this album, Half Moon Bay, your vocals to me recall Paul Simon quite a bit.
Oh Lord! Oh, I would make no such claim, I can tell you.
No, but to my ears, and I'm not saying you were trying to at all. I'm not saying that you were trying to, but at the end of the verses, the way his intonations and yours were very similar, you know, and even the tone of your singing, especially on the Holy Ground, especially on that track. But I mean, that's just my, you know, my,
I don't know. Every now and then somebody says something about, you know, an influence or a similarity or something, but I'd be delighted if there was even a little bit of truth to it.
Okay, all right. Well, it's my truth, so I'm sharing that with you. Another thing I'd like to say about your songs, and this is from, you know, on all of your albums, they, you know, your lengthy songs, like the 5-minute tracks, they don't seem like 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're entertaining throughout. A lot of other artists, bands, musicians, you know, a 5-minute song, it's like halfway through you're looking at how much time's left, you know, and that they drag a little bit. But yours are very entertaining throughout, and when they're done, it's like, wow, was that 5 minutes? You know, so.
Oh, thank you. What that, for me, what that's about is what I make of that is that when I start to write, I have no idea where I'm going, and I kind of like that. I sit down and I play, and I'm looking for somewhere I've never been before. And that's not the way a lot of other people write. I know people write in a style and in a genre. But I like the quote from Miles Davis, who, to a musician in the studio, said, what I want to hear from you is what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. That's how I want to feel when I start to play and when I start to write. And very often I write an intro or an outro or a passage in the middle, because when I start to play, the music sort of comes first. It comes really easily. And I have a lot of stuff, sort of. So it's a journey, and it's, you know, there's a geography to the songs. They're like this for a while, and then they're like that. And then when they're finished, I tend to never write one like that again. So in that way, if you like it, it's interesting, you know. Can't speak for people who don't like it, but if you like it, there is interest, I believe, in it, you know.
Right, right. I hear that. I hear what you're saying too. It never grows, you know, pales or gets boring at any time. Well, again, I mentioned the Holy Ground. One of my top favorite on there, as well as other, you know, critics and fans. But I also like the beautiful instrumental Off the Rocks of, is it Clahane?
At Clahan, yeah.
Clahan. Okay. Okay. I'm learning my Irish today too. Okay. Yeah, that's a beautiful track. Darkness Now is another one that I like. Of course, Western Highway, you know, been covered. You mentioned.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, just the interest about the songs, like Western Highway was a broken-hearted love song, you know, and even though it's written, I think, in the light of other love songs, like some of the same sorts of lines and ideas, but it came from a real place, and so if it touches people, I'm really delighted, because it wasn't turning up at 9 in the morning to write some song, you know.
Right.
It was a
I
real
like
thing.
I like
Off
the
the,
image. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Off the Rocks in Clahan came out of an improvisation in a cave on the coast of Kerry, that I recorded, and then I took like a couple of bits from that I really liked and made it into that track, you know. And it was the improvisation was on the National steel guitar, which I love playing.
Yes, yes, I like that sound too. Yeah. And then talk about Darkness Now.
Oh, I don't know what to say about it. It's a song that came along. I liked playing slide guitar on it.
Mhm.
But I don't. It's a song now. It's years since I even sang it.
Yeah.
I sort of don't know it now.
You don't know it. Well, The Shades of Gloria. Now, was that your vocals double tracked, or was that another singer
That
that
was it was me double tracked. Yeah,
well, now that sounds like Simon and Garfunkel.
it does, and I freely admit that.
Okay.
The
All
two
right.
voices. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean it to be, but I hear that. Yeah.
Right, right. Nice harmonizing. You harmonize well with yourself. Let's put it that way.
No, I must do it again. That's the only time I think I've done it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't remember hearing another track like that. Yeah, I think everybody would enjoy that too. And then The Glass Boat. I like the ukulele.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the track that I recorded in Nashville.
Okay.
And yeah, I love playing the uke, and I put a guitar accompaniment to it. It's quite sort of delicate, but yeah, I've written a bunch of ukulele and tiple and other instrumentals over the years, and I like it as a lead instrument. It's normally a strummed instrument, but it has its own voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You know, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, different instruments, you know, maybe stereotypically, you know, played in this genre or that, but you know, it's kind of like the flute, you know, or no, not the flute, the harmonica. Let's say the harmonica. You know, a lot of times it's associated with blues, you know, music, but then you can hear it played, you know, maybe in a folk song or, prog track
Yeah,
that's done a different way. It's not all that, just, you know, jamming out with it.
yeah. I mean, if you sit down with an instrument, nobody's going to tell you how to play it. You can play it any way you like. So,
Right. Yeah. But there are, many different ways, I'm sure. Well, and then of course, Half Moon Bay. Talk a little bit about that, the title track.
um, same broken heart, same person, but it was in a way a song, in the end is about itself. It's of its own world, and that song was partly about this person who had a relationship with Half Moon Bay, the place. But in the song, I kind of become entangled with her, and so part of it is me and part of it is her, you know. And part of it, again, I wrote that song. It's played on the Martin 12 string that Peter Gilmore sold to me all those years ago, and I would never have written that song on another guitar, another kind of guitar. It's so about the 12 string, and it's just when I wrote the music to it, the words followed after a while, which is what I normally do.
Right. Music first. Yeah, I love the sound of the 12 string. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Have you ever played Spanish guitar in any of your?
Yeah, and the last track on Half Moon Bay is When You're Gone, I Say Your Name, and some of that, and in fact, that I think was recorded in Nashville too. Some of that, most of that is on Spanish guitar. But since then, I have gotten my own Spanish guitar. I borrowed one then. I bought one from Candelas Instruments in Los Angeles. It's a fantastic guitar. Yeah,
I love the sound of that. Okay, well, moving up to what led you to record the Bog Bodies and Other Stories?
I wanted to make, I had lots of material, and I wanted to make an instrumental guitar album. So the album was called The Bog Bodies and Other Stories, Music for Guitar. And the two tracks that are about the Bog Bodies and they're the Bog Bodies in the National Museum in Dublin that were uncovered relatively recently. And it wasn't really my idea to go and see them. I had no great interest in going to see them, but a friend of mine really wanted to go. And when I saw them, they're both sort of preserved in the bogs over, a couple of thousand years. And their remains seem to speak so much of their personalities as people that it's really a shock to see them. You suddenly see that how like people they are that you might even know, even though they're both extraordinary. One was about 6'6", which is really surprising for that time, with very, very delicate hands, and some sort of king or royalty like that. And the other was very tiny, and in his hair they discovered hair product that could only have come from France. And you just get this impression of a very vain, foppish person. They're both extraordinary, and so both of them inspired pieces of music, Cloney Cavan Man and Old Croghan Man. And so those pieces are kind of, in a way, in the centerpiece of the record. But there was lots of other instrumental pieces to go on the record too.
Yeah, you mentioned let's see if I can say the Old Croghan. Old
Croghan, yeah.
That's one of my favorites on there. But I thoroughly enjoy history and archaeology and all of that. So you talking about that's very fascinating. You know, and especially, you know, I guess, I don't know, it may have been during that time period or maybe before, you know, the trade routes from other countries to England or the UK, you know, and like you said, bringing the spices and bringing the perfumes and all that from all over the world, and very, very fascinating, you know, to document that and to hear about that too. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh no, just that you know, people have traveled forever, and there's, you know, so much evidence of that all over Ireland. You know, people were sailing in and out all the time since the beginning of time almost.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think my favorite track off of that album is "Dancing Sweeney." I think that's one that I would go back to and listen to again. Um, and then "The Desert and Two Gray Hills," another one.
Yeah, the Desert and Two Grey Hills um, refers to a Navajo rug that was a gift to me from friends in Los Angeles. And this was somewhere in the 90s. No, sorry, in the 2000s. And I was driving back down through the country from California back to Texas and New Orleans. And I had the rug and I was going to bring it back to Ireland. It's an extraordinary rug from a place called Two Grey Hills. But I didn't know that until we were going through Navajo country, and we would stop at shops in those places, Native American shops, and say, do you know anything about this rug? And they would say, oh, it's clearly Two Grey Hills, but we've never seen one like it. Would you like to sell it? And I would go, no, it's going back to Ireland with me. And then we got a notion to go and visit, to try and find this place, Two Grey Hills, and it wasn't on any map. So we got a Navajo map, and sure enough, it coincided to a tributary road off of the freeway. So we drove up for about an hour and a half, and we were despairing of finding the place. And all of a sudden, I saw two big gray volcanic hills. So there it was. So we took a quick photograph of the Navajo rug against the Two Grey Hills, and then we drove on. So that photograph is in the Bog Bodies album. It's one of the photographs. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's just a big, expansive piece on mainly 12-string guitar again.
Yeah, yeah. So I always find that very interesting too, how someone from another country can tell me more about my country than I know. You know, it's
Well,
like,
I mean, it's musicians. It's just a lucky thing that we can live this way. I've traveled so much in the States. You know, I've seen an awful lot of it, and I've loved it over the years, particularly driving through deserts. I just adore it.
yeah, I know a friend of mine, he's passed since, but back in '82, we drove out to LA from here, and we went through Route 66. You know, we took that out there, and
Yeah.
like I said, driving through the desert, that was like, wow, you know, this is like all the movies we've seen, you know, that are you know, filmed in the desert. Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed that. Well, the other track off of that I enjoy is Fergus River Roundelay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's on the tiple.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's played on the tiple. Okay.
that's
Okay.
played on the tiple. The tiple is kind of like a 10-string steel strung ukulele. It's very, very I don't know how to describe it, but it's a really striking sound, and it's full of you know, the notes last forever and ever and ever.
They
It's
resonate really. Yeah.
it's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now that we're at that point, let me ask you, which is your favorite type of guitar to play? Would it be the 12?
You know, like I always had, my main 6-string guitar is the one that I sort of work with all the time. I do gigs all the time. That's the main guitar and the 12 string. They go with me to every gig that I do. But then I have a lot of other things. I'll show you a really strange one, okay?
Okay, sure.
One sec.
Oh my, yeah, and that's pretty strange.
Yeah,
That
it's
looks,
a
that looks like something that would have been in the Roger Rabbit movie or something, you know. It's like animated almost. Wow, that's
it,
really okay.
it's out of control, isn't it?
It's out of control.
Um,
Wow,
it's called a stereo baritone guitar,
wow.
and it was made by a man in Australia who brought it over to me in Ireland. It was a gift, bless his heart. Paul Kinney is his name.
Okay.
And it's called stereo baritone guitar because the stereo refers to the two sound holes that are in the top that kind of envelop your head when you're playing.
Oh yeah, right.
So, and it's very deep. It's like. Isn't
Yeah,
that nice?
yeah, but it has a nice sound. So you're hearing it in stereo when you're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite something. A little bulky to carry around with you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a soft case made because the maker brought it over in what was really like a coffin, and it's quite heavy.
Okay, okay. Well, talk about how you and Rosie Shipley met.
That was she was on that trip through the desert because we both played on a record by a bagpiper in Texas called E.J. Jones. And E.J. Jones, some of your viewers may know, in a band called Clandestine. And he has his own band now called Piper Jones, I think. And he's a great bagpiper. And he asked me to produce his album. And he asked Rosie Shipley to play fiddle on it. So that's how we met. And we became great friends and played together for a good while. And so we made a duet record called Yesterday I Saw the Earth Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a mixture of fiddle tunes from Ireland and Nova Scotia. Rosie has spent a lot of time in Nova Scotia since she was a child, and some of my own songs and some of my settings of Irish poems into song. So yeah, it was a lovely thing to do.
Yeah. Are you planning to work some more with her?
There's no plan at the moment. I'm not sure that Rosie's dedicating her time to being a mother at the moment, and I'm not sure how much playing she's doing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about. I didn't know where to interject this in the conversation, but the trip to Romania, and playing in the actual cemetery.
Oh yeah. There's a great Irish composer called Sean Davey, who wrote a very famous piece of work called The Brendan Voyage, which is Irish uilleann pipes and orchestra. But he also was commissioned to put to music poems that are on gravestones. They're not really stones, they're wooden, in a famous cemetery in Transylvania. And each of these headstones contain a depiction in paint of the person that's buried there, and also a little poem about them. And so he set these poems to a big series of symphonic songs with orchestra and two choirs. And we went out there to Transylvania to play them in the actual cemetery where the people are buried at night. So I'm one of the few people who has played in a cemetery in Transylvania at night. I'm very proud of that.
Did you feel any spirit moving through you or around you, or?
Well, nothing from a horror movie, that's for sure. It was a delightful experience. Yeah.
All right. Well,
I mean, the way they sing over there, it's incredible, and so it was just an honor to be there and be part of it all. Yeah.
of all the places that you've played, which countries or which audiences do you enjoy? Have you enjoyed the most playing in front of?
There's always going to be, when you're playing and when you're playing well and you're in the zone, as it were, you have no recollection, or at least I have no recollection very often of, I remember sort of being there, but I don't remember what I played, what happened exactly, because you're just in the moment. It's the great thing about it. So there have been great experiences playing music, and I remember the feeling of it. But for example, even when I lived in Los Angeles, playing in the Loch Ness Monster pub, which I did as a residency for years, nights there in the hot desert air, with people sort of going a bit crazy and the band going a bit crazy, and just expressing yourself totally, that's what's great about being a musician for me, is that feeling. And it could be in a small pub like that, or it could be a large gig. But I sort of don't count them up, or really think about them when they're done. I'm looking forward to next week. I'll be playing in St. James's Church in Dingle, and really looking forward to it.
All right. I'm sure it's got some nice acoustics in there, right?
Yeah, it does.
My son is in the choir in high school, and was it last year? Yeah, last year they went to London for their spring break, and they got to sing in a couple of churches there. I don't remember the names of them, but they said how different it was than just playing in an auditorium here or singing, and then singing in a church like that. Yeah. Really nice. Well, talk about Swimming the Horses. It's your latest from 2019.
Yeah.
The title track is one that I go back to and listen to, of course. Talk a little bit about the history behind that.
Where I was living at the time, that's a collection of songs mainly about living in Dingle. And I lived, when I say living in Dingle, it's a peninsula, and so there's loads and loads of different areas. And I lived near a place called Fiohanach and Glashabiog, and right down from my house there was a slipway, or a slipway down to a pier and a little tiny harbor. And in the summertime, the horse trainers would sometimes bring their horses and walk them down, and then walk them into the sea, and walk up and down the pier leading them. So the horses would be swimming at high tide. And it's very good for the horses, very good for their skin and muscles if they have any complaints and all that. So the song came out of, it's one of those things where you say to yourself, why didn't I think before of writing this song? Because it's a great image, swimming the horses.
Yeah.
So,
well, what the whole imagery of water itself, and how healing it is, just for humans, and like you said, for animals. Yeah, that's nice. All Down the Day. That song was nominated for Song of the Year also.
Yeah, in folk awards in Ireland. Yeah. Right. Again, I wrote that quite late, but about when I was 18, and took the boat to London was a close friend of mine, and I spent a couple of years in London. And it's, you know, it was a strange time. It was a good time. And it was a sad time as well. It was, you know, when you're young and you leave Ireland and you just really want to get away and find yourself in a sense and be free and have all these experiences. So the song was really about that time. Yeah.
Okay. And the Old Coastal, another one. My favorite.
Yeah, yeah. That's really more set in the present and about being, you know, this guy like myself who walks along by the sea. Um, yeah. I like the song.
Yeah. And Golden Hair.
Yeah, James Joyce poem. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Which it's funny. I wrote the music to it, and then I was coming home from a gig that night, and suddenly the James Joyce poem came into my head, and I knew it would work, the two things together. So yeah, that was lucky.
And then the banyan guitar. Is that a guitar made up from the banyan tree?
I had a dream. Will sound silly. I had a dream in which somebody made me a guitar, and when I opened the case, it was made out of a banyan tree, and so I just wrote a song called "The Banyan Guitar."
Yeah, that's a nice one as well. Well, what has been the response to the album?
Pretty good, I think. You know, I think it's a good collection of songs. It was the first time that I recorded myself here in the house, and very much a learning curve. And you know, I'm not sure that I got it all right, but I learned a lot. These days, you release a record and you send it to the radio stations, and you get 2 or 3 weeks of attention, and they move on so quickly, you know. But it's great you'll always have the record, and so, you know, I do lots of gigs around here and sell them like at those gigs, and then if you go on the road, they're for sale. But increasingly, you know, people stream music. They don't really buy records.
Yeah, you're right. It's a different time.
Yeah.
Well,
But I mean, I'm too old to, you know, I sometimes reflect, what are you doing writing songs? Like, what's the point of this? But I've been doing it too long now. I'm just not going to stop. Yeah.
well, you know, you're a musician, you know, at heart, and it's who you are, so it has to come out, you know.
Yeah. So it seems.
Yeah, you know, you can't suppress that. Well, looking back over the years, what artists have you really enjoyed touring with and playing with?
Oh, I had a brief episode of playing with Marianne Faithfull, and I was so impressed with her. I thought, contrary to her image, I suppose, she was just a pro. She was just fantastically together as a performer, and very, very good. There's been countless people, and I'd hate to single, you know, people out and not single others, but I had an interesting experience playing with Peter Gordon and his bunch of musicians who used to play with Arthur Russell. And when he asked me to do it, I had never heard of Arthur Russell. And his music is so striking. And the music that we played in Australia and in Europe, in England and in Ireland, and they all came over from New York. They all used to play with Arthur Russell. And we played a kind of a whole concert length collection called Instrumentals that Arthur Russell wrote. And they're really amazing pieces of music, because they're kind of very, you know, people would think of it as avant-garde. They're very arty, but they're also very poppy and very kind of primal. And it's just hugely interesting to play that kind of music with those people. You know, the trombone player was Peter Zumo, who's a legend and just incredible musician to play with. Yeah.
Well, this is, I'm sure, is out of order as well, but how and when were you invited to play the White House?
Oh, that's easy. I was playing with the Sharon Shannon band, and I think we played there on St. Patrick's Day. So it was during the Clinton years.
Okay.
And it was a great experience to be there. It's a lovely house if you've never been. It's a really impressive house. And at that time, certainly before certain other people had their hands on it, it bore a lot of the fingerprints of Jackie Kennedy and her style. Very beautiful. It was amazing to see Bill Clinton, who's perhaps the best public speaker I've ever heard. He was an extraordinary, with no notes for about 50 minutes. It was just an amazing thing to see. And a funny thing from that day was I was seated next to Thomas Keneally, who is an author from Australia who's written books that I had really enjoyed. So Schindler's Ark was one of his books, which became Schindler's List. Anyway, I was full of that nonsense you do when you really admire somebody and you say, "Oh, Mr. Keneally, I really love your books," and he's got nowhere to go with that. But he was saying in return, your fiddle player in your band, she's a goddess. Do you know, all he wanted to talk about was how beautiful Mary Toasty was, and I wanted to talk about how much I loved the books. But yeah, it was a great experience that day.
Yeah. Well, did Bill play with you? Because he's a saxophonist, right?
No, he didn't. I mean, we're playing traditional music at 100 miles an hour, but I'll tell you, because when you've played for a long time, you know when people are really listening and when they're just, you know, putting in the time. And he was a great listener, and Hillary Clinton too was a great listener. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you've always got that in your CV, right? The White House.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, moving on to real quickly the production work that you've done. Several albums for other artists like Kevin Burke, Patrick Street, and you mentioned Andy M. Stewart earlier. How did you like being in the producer's chair?
I liked it very much. Maybe I liked it too much. It's nice to be part of something that's happening. When you're making a record, you lose sense of time. It's very sort of comforting, because all you're thinking about is making a record and the sounds and the performances and the whole thing, and how to make it good if you can, how to make it better if you can. So it takes all that time away from you as well. Like, it's a big commitment. Yeah. I made one recently for a singer here called Ailish Kennedy, you know, loved making the record, and I think it's really good. Yeah, you just want to do good work, and it's a way of totally immersing yourself in sound and ideas. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, you it seems like you work real well with them, for them to want to work with you, and you're not one of those heavy-handed producers. I take it you're you work you I'm sure you have your ideas, but you've got
yeah. I mean, it's not, you know, it's about helping the artists,
right,
you know, fulfill their ideas and their mission, you know.
right.
But there's a lot you can, like, it can mean anything, producing, you know. There's producers who do nothing at all and do nothing well, you know. That's a way too of doing it. But I very often I'm there as well to kind of contribute arrangements and things like that, and it's good. Yeah.
Bring your expertise to the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, you mentioned Peter Gordon. We talked about that. Talk a little bit about some of the films that you've written music for.
Oh, I can't. There was one, they've flown out of my head. There was one for an educational thing for the Shannon, an educational thing about the River Shannon in Ireland, you know, those kinds of little things. I haven't done a huge amount. I've written music for plays in Dingle here, and love doing it. It's just brilliant. I love commissions, you know, because it takes away all the angst of what am I going to write today and what's it going to be about, you know.
You know beforehand, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I can see that. I could appreciate that. Let me ask you this question. Do you prefer playing live, writing, recording, or producing others?
Oh, you know, playing is the best, you know, but there are such sweet moments when you're writing, when suddenly something is there, you know, out of nothing. It's lovely, you know. I kind of live for that.
Where does the inspiration come from? Is there certain times of the day or during the middle of the night that it comes?
No, there isn't. For me, there are no rules really. I'm not the kind of person who can write 9 to 5. It's just you pick up the guitar. Sometimes I'm afraid to pick up the guitar because I feel I don't have enough time, because I'm afraid that something will come. But you pick up the guitar and start to play, and you start to play something you've never played before. That's what you're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. And that can be any time. And I, you know, record all those bits and pieces into the computer, and I keep a file for every month in GarageBand, you know, and so all the ideas, I review them now and then and throw out a lot of things. Yeah.
Okay. You like that idea, the home recording, being able to do that, you know, on your own?
Well, it's a way of memory, of remembering ideas, because they can come thick and fast sometimes, and so it's a way of just having them there, so you can listen back and go, oh wow, that wasn't bad.
It sure has changed since back in the day where you had to have like a notepad with you and you write this down, the ideas down. Now you can record them as they come to you.
Yeah. Well, it's just as well. I don't write music, so I don't read or write music, so I've a good memory, but it's nice to be able to record things. Yeah.
All right. Well, what's on the horizon, or the immediate horizon for you?
This is a good year for writing. I like what I'm writing, and I'm doing lots of gigs in Dingle all the time. There are great musicians here. There are extraordinary singers, a great collection of them that I play with constantly. So it's just surrounded by music here. It's a real kind of community of musicians, a colony, and of very individualistic people, all very different. And a lot of it is based in traditional Irish music and folk music, but they're all very much themselves, and it's very stimulating to play with them all. Yeah. So I do that, and then I always have my own music going on at the same time. So
yeah, like you said, there's a long heritage of music there, and you're into the world where you are. Yeah, it goes back a long ways. Well, I don't know if we didn't talk about this, but if you would care to play something to take us out, maybe something new that you've been working.
Sure. Yeah. I'll do this one because I just wrote it. I'll get into tuning for it.
All right.
And it's a song we started out talking about Ennis. And when I was in Ennis, I had my 1 year of musical education was I went to piano lessons for 1 year to this woman whose name was Sissy Murray, and she lived on Harmony Row. Harmony Row. I mean, why did it take so long to write the song? So, um, but the song isn't really about her exactly or about that. It's about the River Fergus, which lapped up against the back of Harmony Row. It laps up against the backs of the houses there, and it winds its way through the town. And when you are a child with a river nearby and you walk along the banks of the river, you end up not just staring into the river, but in a way dreaming into the river. And so that's what this song is about. And I think it's called Harmony Row. I haven't decided yet. Driving, driving to the old Clare line, not for the first time in my life. Leaving, leaving, and when I return, I don't know. When I was a child and a fugitive also. The river was murmuring by on Harmony Road. Driving, driving for the whole day long. The horizon makes me strong, even when my heart is heavy and low. When I was a boy and singing a backseat song, the river was whispering on Harmony Road. By the reedy rushes of the river that flows to the sun setting over the ocean, I sing a song sometimes that nobody knows. The notes rise on up, released in a cloud-scudded sky. The river, oh, the river is telling me why. On Harmony Road. Driving, driving to the old Clare line.
Very nice, nice melody.
Hey, thank you.
And I just become like mesmerized when I love finger pickers, when I'm watching your your fingers down there. It's just like, wow, just entranced by that. Really nice, really nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well,
It's all muscle memory.
well, thank you for previewing that here. So are we the first to hear that?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Great, great. Well, I hope that it does get put down to recording and and come up with a suitable title. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. I like that. All right. Well, can you think of anything else in closing that you'd like to add?
We could go on forever maybe, but as well that we don't. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, I guess that's a sign of a good interview, a good conversation. Uh, well, I appreciate it, Gerry, your time and for sharing so much and
Thank you.
for
Total pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on your series. It looks amazing, all the people you've interviewed.
well, it takes I reach out, but it takes you guys to be open to do it, and interested as well. So it takes two to tango, right? So yes, thank you so much, and continued success to you, and you know all that life brings you, uh, and you. I will be in touch once I do get this edited. I'll send you over the link so you can post it, to your social media,
Great.
and
Will
yes,
do.
and let everybody know.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you again, Gerry.
Thanks,
And
Greg.
sure.